And we're live.
Good morning and welcome. It's Friday, and that's why we have our fancy jackets on, because it's time to celebrate what has been our first 5 days, our first legally binding week of work. However, that's obviously not how the UNFCCC works. You can believe me that these negotiators have been working late into the night, most nights. I'm not sure exactly what time negotiations finished last night, but I know the night before they finished after 2 a.m. That's pretty unprecedented for a first week, but it does go to show you that at least some of these negotiators are very, very serious about getting a treaty by the end of the week, and that most of them are willing to sit in these rooms until very, very late at night to try and push out what is going to be a very, very difficult, but hopefully a very hopeful, there you go, hopefully a hopeful message at the end of the week, a kind of a global agreement that will hopefully send a message not only to citizens, but to industries and to kind of different labor groups and different kind of community groups around the world that we are genuinely 100% serious about taking action on climate change, and that it's no country in particular, it is actually the whole world. You will have seen yesterday, however, that there were some, I guess, some tensions in many of the rooms, and that some negotiating geographies, shall we say, were potentially not exactly supporting the way forward, is what I will say. And I'm sure I'll pass around the microphone to some of our lovely panelists later on, and potentially some, I guess, a more personalized perspective on that one. So as we have Tini and Joshua Wiese here, and Tini can be she normally does, and she's avidly prepping for that. So if you have any kind of great tweets or anything like that, I'm sure she'll be able to find them. But just before Tina goes in, just a quick announcement to everyone. I don't make these announcements often, but actually we got a personal message from someone who is not my mother saying, "Chris, you're funny. I actually laughed out loud a few times at these Daily Tck intros." So I just wanted everyone to recognize that before we begin. We do have a online captive audience, and if you don't like my jokes, well, other people do. So great. But otherwise, we also have Joshua Wiese, who's joining us again today with the political download from the day. And I'm going to cross live to him right now. And Josh, what was the big events yesterday? What were some of these tensions, and how do we get through them?
First of all, I want to just make it clear to all of you that I did not send Chris that email. Okay, so I just came from the Climate Action Network International's political coordination meeting, where I got a bit of a download on people's perception of the state of play. Yesterday, we started the day with a new text, and I think it had shrunk from something like 54 pages to 50 pages, and there was a sense that it was more readable, but also a sense that really we were only making progress from the margins of the key issues and big things like climate finance. So this sort of sense of how you differentiate between where it's on the sort of spectrum of developing and historic responsibility and all this, how that fits in. So that seems to be slowing progress, or at least slow progress yesterday. Just a few minutes ago. Thanks to our tracker from Spain, Anna. I just got word that we have new text. It's 46 pages. So again, we're making progress. But I think that I haven't seen it yet. But I expect that issues like finance remain the big sticking points. That's really what seems to be holding up progress. Not finance alone. For all of these national climate action plans, these INDCs that have been put forward, there's work being done to try and get to have sort of transparency and to be able to assess this going forward. And so related to finance, there are issues around support for these transparency measures. We've had reports on Workstream 2, which is the pre-2020 climate action. So we know we need to peak emissions in the next 5 years in order to really hit these ambitious long-term targets. And the Paris Agreement doesn't come into force until 2020. So we have this short period and work being done here to ramp up climate action in the near term. Yesterday we heard that finance was also coming up then, and it was an issue. Today I've heard, well, I don't think that was resolved. A lot of the NGOs asks outside of finance. A lot of the climate movement's asks for what should go into this portion of the agreement are there, and it's looking pretty good. That isn't to say it's a sure thing. I think there's this near-term ambition, this pre-2020 piece of what Paris might agree is not the highest thing on most ministers' agendas. So when they take up all of these issues in the COP next week, there's some risk that the progress we've made in the last few days on this near-term ambition could be lost just because it's not a high priority. There are lots of other higher priorities. So we're seeing some good progress on workstream 2. While I think the Daily Tck was happening yesterday, or right before, Germany held a press conference coming out in support of 1.5 degrees. So that was fantastic. It was a move in the right direction. That follows Hollande, France's leader, who came out supporting that position as well, or sort of there was good developed country leadership on 1.5, and we were seeing good progress. And then yesterday, in one of the subsidiary body meetings, looking back on this 2-year review that assessed the adequacy of the long-term goal. So we've spent years with experts looking at 2 degrees and what it means, and 1.5 degrees and what it means, and assess the expert view, the sort of consensus. What they came up with after this long process was that indeed 2 degrees leaves a lot of vulnerable communities in a very, very dangerous position, and that 1.5 is much better. So yesterday we had an opportunity to take these findings and forward them to the COP, which will be starting next week. This is when the French take over and the ministers are working on the text for consideration. Could help us strengthen the long-term goal in the agreement. Yesterday, this Saudi Arabia, with I think on behalf of the Arab group, the Arab bloc, really pushed back on that and didn't allow that report, its findings, to be forwarded from that subsidiary body to the COP. It didn't make a recommendation to the COP effectively. So this was pretty serious blocking by Saudi Arabia on this 1.5 degrees thing. They weren't the only ones. China was not as vocal, but also pushing back, and India was also blocking, but not vocally at all. So the Saudis and I think the Arab group sort of more broadly throwing up a big challenge for us. It's not a dead issue. This is on the agenda for the COP president to take up next week. And I think there's going to be a lot of advocacy. Over 100, I think at least 100, maybe more than 100 countries have come out supporting 1.5 degrees, supporting a really ambitious long-term goal. And hopefully they'll step up, and certainly society is going to step up in the next few days to make sure that the COP president takes this up and we can kind of get past this barrier. We have a sense of who doesn't want it and who's willing to sort of stand up against it. That kind of feeds into this larger dynamic that is playing out, where there's sort of an undermining confidence here. We had this great energy earlier in the week, and today we have a sense that the lack of resolution on finance is really slowing things down. Beyond that, I think we saw statements from leaders like President Obama, who said that developed countries have responsibility to sort of lead on solving this, having had the biggest hand in creating this problem. And there's been real pushback from those same governments whose leaders cannot show leadership to finance the impact. And most of this 1.5 degrees thing being blocked in the subsidiary body meeting yesterday. So that's a trend that's troubling. I haven't had a chance to look at this text that just came out a few minutes ago. Maybe we've seen some progress, but these meetings between negotiators, I think mostly in contact groups, possibly in some spin-off group meetings, are going to continue through today. And the goal is to complete another round of text and present it to the COP president, close the ADP tomorrow, and take things up at a higher level on Monday, where hopefully we see some resolution on these sort of tougher political issues. I think that's kind of the majority of my update. Maybe some of you have more insight into other dimensions or different view. Be happy to hear it.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm just kind of trying to do as much as I can for all of you guys, and I've just done a quick searches on some of the key issues that we've found. I've found human rights is mentioned specifically 5 times in the news text. 1.5 mentioned a couple of times, and the 2013 to 2015 review is also there. They're all in brackets from what I can see, but definitely there's some options there, I guess, that we can work for. And I heard that potentially some people were quite worried about a number of those issues late last night. And potentially they are there, and potentially they are actively there, such that people can move on them and act on them. I haven't had a chance to look through kind of the broader issues of finance and everything like that. As we heard, we just saw it, and the adopting negotiator team's working on it very fast, and we should have kind of a very, very quick update for you, and then a longer update later in the day. But before we do, we've just heard some political updates, and obviously yesterday was a big day of negotiations. So let's move into the crowd, and let's hear from you who has some interesting political updates that they might like to share on what is day 5, the Friday, what is potentially we're scrolling, yes, the green screen behind me that will turn into a lovely Titanic backdrop very soon. But who has some political updates before I have to kind of call on people and get a further elaboration of what happened yesterday? So we have some Brazilians here. Nice to meet you all. Tudo bem? Bom dia. And Brazil obviously plays a really critical role in these negotiations, but some of the key issues that we heard about yesterday, we didn't necessarily hear too much movement from Brazil. Do you think that was a strategic move from Brazil, or are you kind of a little bit unsure yourselves in terms of what Brazil is really kind of pushing for over the last couple of days? How about you?
Yeah, we've been talking to the government. I mean, like, we have a very good dialogue with the negotiators from Brazil here, and we are not sure of what they are doing as well. I mean, like, they say something back home, but they do other stuff here. So we do think it's strategic, but yeah, we're not sure.
So are you hopeful for how Brazil might, I guess, kind of proceed? There's some key issues that have been talked about recently. Obviously, forest was a big one on the first couple of days, and now we're talking about kind of 1.5, the 2013 to 2015 review of how important 1.5 might be. There was some human rights discussions yesterday. Are you hopeful that Brazil will come out in support of some of these bigger issues, or do you think that maybe they might remain kind of a little bit more uncertain of things?
We are always suspicious when we hear good things about Brazil. I mean, like, we know Brazil, everybody sees the Brazilian government as a hero or like super progressive, but we live there and know that's not true at all. Yeah, I think like we are hopeful. We're always hopeful because that's why we're here. Because like we're trying to make a difference and to like talk to them and make them realize that how that's important. But I'm still a little bit over the fence. Like, I'm not sure yet, but I'd like to be hopeful that that's how it's going to proceed. That Brazil is going to be like take a leadership role here and like support everything that we're hoping for.
And we're about to head to the weekend. Will the Brazilian young people in particular be supporting other young people in enjoying the weekend?
always.
All right, so let's get a different perspective. So we have some of our French colleagues here. Now, Leslie, once again, we have a brand new text. Once again, a French text has been revealed. But obviously, there was a few key moments yesterday. Were you able to kind of track any of those? And do you have any interesting updates? Maybe if not from the French negotiators, but maybe from how, one more day in French media. Have there been any interesting reports that have come out? Any interesting reactions from, I guess, French readers or French civil society?
Actually, while we are here, we don't have any time to read the news in the French newspaper. Sorry.
All right, well, if any of our non-French colleagues could help out our French colleagues with French media coverage, that would probably be really useful for them. Maybe send some quick summaries. I might pass over to one of the trackers for now. So we have Pari and Renee here. So Renee is from the Philippines and Pari is from India. Yesterday we heard a number of interesting, potentially rumors or potentially things that were happening within the negotiations around what they call the 2013 to 2015 review. Could you just describe what that review was and potentially what is the key issue that is being discussed as they are negotiating this?
The 1.5. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I didn't actually read the review yet, but with the 1.5, I think that the Philippine delegation, I think, has been trying to still push with the along with the CVF, and the CVF has new members. The 1.5 degree issue, and I think there's new studies that came out that says that we need 1.5, that 2 degrees is too much, and I believe that there are new countries supporting 1.5.
All right, great. And Pari, we heard from Josh that India was more diplomatically potentially not necessarily supporting 1.5. We saw France and Germany make quite positive statements in that direction this week. Do you think India is ever going to be able to come out and support 1.5, or do you think that this is something that is really against, I guess, some of India's development interests, and they might be worried that having a 1.5 goal might somehow constrict that? Could you just open up that idea and explain it for us?
Sure. So I think that for India, they have always been, especially the negotiators, have always been stressing on the 2 degree goal, and all their communication also has been around that. So I don't think so that India is likely to come out and speak openly on the 1.5 degrees issue. However, I also know that the negotiators have been saying this for a long time, that they're really open to discussions and negotiating, and that can be one of the reasons why they're not openly coming out and talking about their intentions to keep the 2 degree goal. But at the same time, there are a lot of things which are happening in discussions, and we'll only get to see what they're going to say in the few days. But it's highly unlikely that they'll support the 1.5 degree goal.
Sure. We have an update, it seems.
I got him to sign this time. I want five. I took a picture with him, and it's on our Twitter. And also, right now at 11, we're doing a little extra here. We're doing a limbo. Size limit and price limit. Standard 1.5 minutes. And we can start to negotiate under the 1.5. That's it.
And what would be the things to what are we expecting here?
Just let them
and kind of like a consensus of the communities. Who is shaking their head now because they know exactly what I'm going to be asking about. So yesterday was a big day for some of our GCC countries. We in particular saw a lot of negotiations that potentially were being held up by some of these countries. Do you know anything about that, or are you kind of ready to share any intelligence about that?
Hello everyone, I'm Riman Malla. You should know me by now because every show I'm on. So in terms of Saudi Arabia and the Arab League, things have been quite difficult. There's been a lot of clashes, not only with other groups but within the group itself. When we were trying to approach the delegations yesterday, they themselves were having a clash in front of us, so it was quite obvious something was really, like, it was very tense. And when we tried to be quite like low when we were talking to them, and we just got the stare of get out right now, we're going through something. So we're waiting for everything to calm down a bit to actually get some intel on what's happening. But we do know that within the group, they are not agreeing on what's going on. So when it comes to 1.5, I don't know if you guys have heard, but if you've listened to the president of Egypt speak, he did mention that he supported the 1.5. However, when we spoke to the Egyptian delegation, they said completely the opposite, that what he was saying had nothing to do with the strategy they've come here with. So that was quite interesting, having the president say something, yet the delegation something else. So obviously there's something happening inside, and we're trying to get to know. So wait for the next update tomorrow, same time, same place.
Well, one more thing, actually. There was some of the people in this room are kind of keenly interested in the human rights issue. And yesterday there was a few press conferences, and there was a lot of discussion around human rights in general. And it seems that a number of the Arab countries are adding kind of the idea of the rights of people in occupied territories, which potentially is a very kind of very important right for many of those people, but potentially is also kind of very difficult for a lot of other countries to accept. Just like many of these rights are difficult for a lot of different countries in different ways. What do you think is kind of going to happen in those discussions? Because it seems like that some of these Arab countries were very, very forceful that this needs to be included. And then obviously that was kind of seen by many other countries as like, no, this is not part of the kind of agreement. And it was seen as one of these kind of very divisive issues. Do you think that that will be resolved, or do you expect that that is potentially something that could continue throughout the week?
That is actually under dialogue at the moment, and the argument at the moment is how much are they willing to compromise? And this is what is on the table at the moment. So if they want that included, they are very much aware that they actually need to abide by the rest of what comes underneath the article of human rights, because during the ADP talks in Bonn, obviously they were slamming it and didn't really want it in the text. But now that the whole Arab League is there, and they put the whole concept, or like the issue of people under occupied territories need to come in, they've actually been slammed back, going, well, you slammed it last time. So now they're kind of under discussion, well, doing the discussions as to what they can accept and compromise with. So I think we have actually come a step forward rather than back, because in Bonn it was like a no-no. Like, it was not even considered. But now it's actually being considered, and they within themselves, within their group, are discussing that.
Just on that, what would you recommend? You said maybe this is a step forward. I think there may be some other people who think that it's maybe a strategic step sideways. But what would you recommend if there are these potential divisions, or if there are these kind of challenging and changing views on human rights in particular? Would you have any kind of ideas on how maybe people in this room or people watching could maybe reach out to some of these countries and maybe make some kind of supportive headway in getting some sort of better sense of how to make progress here?
I think one thing everybody always ignores is the rest of the Arab group. Everyone just focuses on Saudi Arabia, forgetting there are 20 other countries within the Arab League. And so bringing voices out that we need to bring, this is our job, to bring these voices out. And so I think this is where civil society is not really helping us as an Arab group, because they just focus on Saudi Arabia. They forget that there's Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia. There are all these countries like that are just left behind, and they actually have a voice in this and within the Arab League themselves. So if we as civil society don't actually bring them out on the good things, like I don't know if you've listened to the Tunisian president's speech, or you've listened to the Moroccan king's speech. They were actually one of the best speeches when the GCC states didn't even speak at all, although uploaded their statements, which were very neutral. And I think we need to bring that out a bit more, and that would be good to have support on that, bringing out the different aspects that they shed light on. So I think that's where civil society can help us, remembering that there are other countries and maybe a champion, like, what's the English word, championing? Like those countries that have actually been with human rights and issues such as that.
Yeah, that's a really important reminder, I think, for everyone. And correct me if I'm wrong, it was Tunisia in the INDC was one of the first countries to talk about, Yeah,
Tunisia is actually one of the first countries in the whole Arab League to have climate action in their new constitution. Not just like having a climate strategy, but actually put climate change in their new constitution after the revolution. So no one's talking about that, but so we need to bring this out at civil society, and that's why we need help.
and just finally, with Morocco being the next, I guess, location of the COP, is that something that potentially we could use as well?
Definitely, and actually Morocco is kind of taking the lead, whereby I don't know if you've looked at their climate change strategy, but they are definitely the most ahead, along with Tunisia, in the whole Arab region, and with Jordan, of course, because Jordan's been doing great stuff. And we are at the moment in meetings with the COP22 Secretary Generals, and the strategy that they have together is amazing, and they're using that as well to lobby the governments to even get the ambition that they have even higher, even though their ambition is already high in comparison to, say, the GCC states. And I think we need to give them that credit and also push them to even push that bar higher than it is right now, because obviously compared to world standards, that is not as high. But for our region, that for us, that's really good, and we need help in pushing that.
Great reflections, thank you. This is obviously why we go to our GCC correspondents every day, and hopefully they'll be with us for the rest of the 2 weeks, because obviously that is critical insight. And just on Jordan, if any of you have read the REN 21 report of renewable energy around the world, you'll see that Jordan was actually highlighted as one of the top 5 countries in the world of renewable energy investment as a percentage of the GDP. So, while Jordan might not be the biggest country in the world, it's certainly one of the top 5 investors in renewable energy compared to what they have. The last person I'll go on put on the camera is Lihi Yona, who's from Canada. And Canada was one of the big, changes that we've seen this week. And there was one particular issue yesterday around human rights in which Canada was really standing out on as a developed partner. Are you aware of this? And do you have kind of an understanding of how this is going?
Definitely. So I haven't been that connected to the Canadian negotiations for the past couple of days. So I'm a little I don't know if there are any Canadians in the room, probably be more able to answer this question. Yes, that's great. I think in general, just on the topic of Canada, a lot of the Canadian NGOs are struggling because this is the first time, like I said, in a decade that we have a government that we're not just completely 100% against. So I know what. So it's really a delicate balance we're trying to play between, encouraging that kind of behavior, but also making sure that we're holding them accountable to the long list of other things that they have not yet acted on, and in terms of their election promises. So there is a little bit of that, gentle nudging that we're trying to do. And obviously the human rights was really great news to hear, but we're still hoping for the government to step up just a little bit more.
And just finally, with I guess this brand new administration, do you think that Canada could maybe make some shifts within the umbrella group policy, or do you think right now their kind of potential shifts are all individual, and that we should really expect them to try and shift kind of a whole group's ideas?
No, I definitely think that Canada can have some pressure put on it. Again, I don't speak on behalf of all the Canadian NGOs here. I do think, I think that the current party really promoted itself as being the anti-harbor, being different, and I think, and being peaceful. They've been saying time and time again, Canada is back, Canada is proud to be back, and I think it would be helpful on the Canadian side to see this pressure coming from other countries. One of the biggest points that people made during the election campaign was that Canadians were no longer proud to travel internationally. We would rather look like Americans than be Canadian, and that's a point of pride. So I think having delegates from other countries really put some pressure on, and kind of encourage Canada to take on this leadership role, I think is really important, beyond just not being so shitty, like start being the leader that we know, or we used to know. So yeah, I definitely think there's room for Canada to have some pressure put on them there.
So is it a Twitter campaign, Canada Not So Shitty 2015? All right. Anyway, so let's go to the actions. So who's got an action plan today? We obviously heard from Engagement Mundo, so I might give it back just to give a quick reminder. What's the action again, and where can we meet? And do we know which samba song we'll be dancing
to? I don't know which samba is gonna play, but it's gonna be like a limbo. It's gonna be like a rope, and you need to go under the 1.5 degree, like dancing. And we are going to invite some negotiators to go under the rope. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Who else has got an action plan today? Oh, we have one at the back.
Just following this action, Loss and Damage Working Group for Younger is organizing an action at 12 between hall 4 and 5 outside. And I don't have the exact details, but it's going to involve the massive Jenga game. So, yeah, like some Jenga and linking that to impacts of loss and damage.
Great. And any other actions planned? Oh, we have one over here.
Just some news on the Jenga Tower action. It's currently postponed until tomorrow at 1 for your information. So, but it will happen, but it's postponed. More info is coming. Thanks.
Well, it sounds like one final action here.
It's an action about 1.5 degree action. I just received an email in the Youngo mailing list. It's at 11:30 at the Red Eiffel Tower. Basically, some people will read survival declarations, and I can't tell you much more about it, but yeah, Eiffel Tower, 11:30 in a minute.
Great, that is the small Eiffel Tower here. In case anyone's watching, there is not going to be a massive action at the Eiffel Tower. French security, don't worry about it. It's the one that's just here. Get back to your offices, it's fine. You can read your emails and, play Fruit Smash or whatever on your phones. So otherwise, if there's no other actions, I'll remind everyone today is Education Day. So thank you so much for all of our speakers who've given us a bit of education this morning. But there are a whole host of other educative events. But as we all remember, there is, before we are allowed to go to school, we spend some time as a small child. And before that, we may be even seen as a baby. And I've heard, Anna, is it true or not that there may be an action with babies today at an unconfirmed time and place, kind of like an Einsteinian location?
Yeah, I thought the time was right now, so I will check. But yeah, so it looks like politicians are a bit playing like babies, so we will have an action about that. Not sure location.
All right, look out for it. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people interested in a bunch of people looking like babies. But otherwise, let's cross live now to Teeny Smith. So Teeny, you received my message saying that I was funny. Was that in the headlines as well, or have you got some other news for us?
Just so you all know, it was me that sent Chris that email. It was just to make him feel better about himself. So, so a few things in the headlines today. Another quite big day, but a little bit less coverage, I would say, this morning. I think I'm getting through, drilling down into process a lot more. I think potentially quite a lot of the big papers might have sent some of their journalists home, with them probably coming back again towards the end of the conference. Still a lot of focus on finance and the issues that remain in finance, the divides between countries, both about how to scale up finance, but also about who should be paying for that finance and this issue of whether or not to broaden the donor base for finance. So that's still dominating a lot of the headlines, as well as a lot of headlines about the fact that while we do have new text, it's not necessarily some of the big issues aren't being resolved. So a lot of focus on that as well. A little bit on the stuff that Josh mentioned earlier about the temperature goal issue. We've had a few articles focusing on that and on the Germany and France supporting it. So that's another one that's sort of circulating a little bit today, and it's one that I guess a lot of people are pushing. It's kind of going to be a big push over the next few days, both in terms of probably media coverage, but also in terms of more mobilisation stuff. We've already had a few of the actions that are going on today, and I know a few of other groups are looking into potentially pushing some tweets to certain ministers and delegations, pushing some graphics, potentially some cartoons and stuff. So we'll keep you updated on that as we know more. There's also potentially another action on that tomorrow. And also, just so you know, we've got a couple of social graphics that we've already got that we're sharing online, one focusing on the Climate Vulnerabilities Forum, and a couple on Germany and France and how they support 1.5 degrees and asking who's going to be next. So if you want those, they can be found on the Adoption Negotiator Flickr site, or just come to me and give me your email and I'll send you the link to those. Just in terms of stuff we're tracking today, finance is going to be another big issue today, not just in terms of within the negotiations, but it also seems to be Finance Day here. So a lot of focus on the private sector and some of the stuff that they're already doing in terms of investing in clean energy, in terms of sort of protecting their own portfolios from climate risk. Some big things that we're looking out for. At 1 p.m, there's going to be an event, press conference that the Bank of England head Mark Carney is going to be at, as well as Michael Bloomberg. So that might be worth going along to. Big names, could be some big announcements there. We've also got, give me a second, sorry. A few other bits and bobs on that. There's some a press conference at 3 till 4:30, something that the UN is hosting on investor actions on climate change. They're sort of the big ones we've got on finance. In terms of a few other things to watch, obviously the CAN press conference, which kicks off in 5 minutes. I think that will be another good opportunity, along with Josh's wonderful update, to get a bit of an understanding of where the negotiations are. I think a lot of the focus today is going to be on some of the key issues, so loss and damage, and then finance, both in terms of unlocking the trillions for renewable energy, but also in terms of differentiation within the negotiations. Again, the issue of who pays and ramping up finance. The COP presidency is also giving a press conference at 1:15, so again, giving a good overview potentially of where we stand. And the US is giving one at 2:30, which Todd Stern is going to be giving a briefing to journalists, so another one that will be interesting to tune into. We've also got an awful lot of different NGOs that are going to be giving their latest updates today. So you've got press conferences from CAN France, CAN US, Oxfam and WWF. So they'll probably all be really good to get different aspects on the state and the negotiations. I won't run through all the times and places for those. They're all on the website. And again, if you can't get into the media centre, if you're not on a press badge, you can watch them all either live or watch them back online. They're all saved on the UN website. So I think that's the update from me.
Well, thank you again. This has been our kind of first full week, if you like. We're going to be live tomorrow as well. For everyone online, negotiations happen on Saturdays even sometimes. And I believe they're going to take a small break on Sunday, but potentially they're going to kind of go through the weekend with lots of bilateral meetings and meetings in between different delegations. And this is our full 2-week schedule. So please stay with us. We're going to be giving you the best updates you can possibly receive each day, as you have received them so far. My comedy will not drop. It is apparently wonderful and it will continue, but I will not sing any more self-praises because I'm sure that one person who did send me the message will never do it again. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being a live and engaged audience. We'll be seeing you again tomorrow. And just to let you know, the new texts are out. And if you follow the climatetracker.org website, we will be getting you some updates throughout the day on how you can read and understand and get to know these texts as the true family that they should represent, the true future that we may have. But before we do that, without any further ado, thanks everyone, and we'll see you later.